Grandmaster Hans Niemann is in Wijnkanse, Netherlands for his first Tata Steel Masters, and he is on 2 points out of 3, 1 win and 2 draws, and this round he's facing Aravindh Chithambaram with the black pieces. The game is about to start. Arvind is not on the board, and Hans starts the clock, and there comes Arvind. A minute late to the game. This one is going to be a very exciting clash because two of the most fearless creative players are going to face off against each other, and I think this will be a full-fledged fight. Arvind calms himself down. He's late by a minute, but there's 1 hour 58 minutes, so can calmly begin here. He goes knight to f3 and adjusts all his pieces and presses the clock. Hans Niemann with black now. What's his move going to be? Is he going to play d5, c5, knight f6? Many options here. He goes knight to f6. And Arvind now pushes his pawn to g3. He wants to get his bishop to g2 and quickly castle here. And pawn comes up to c5. Well, you can convert this into an English opening. He goes bishop to g2. And now d5 is possible. He goes knight to c6 first. Maybe white can just put the pawn on c4 here. And that's what Arvind is thinking. Yes, he plays his pawn to c4. We now have an English opening. And black can play e6, d5. This setup, he goes for a direct d5. And Arvind has a choice between taking the pawn or pushing his own pawn to d4. Arvind takes quite a lot of time on this move. And now pawn takes pawn. Well, knight takes pawn is the main move here. It was 10 minutes of thought for Arvind to take here. Maybe he was also thinking if he could play d4. cd, knight d5. And now castles is the main move. He plays his knight to c3, which is also fine. And black often goes back knight to c7. Now, why do you go back here is the question. Well, the thing is that white wants to take and then bring the queen to the center of the board where it's slightly exposed. So playing the knight to c7 has its advantages. Yes, you are behind in development, but now you can play pawn to e5 and gain a lot of space in the center. That's what he does, pawn to e5. Now, white cannot play d4. It's not possible. It plays a3. And somewhere often in these lines, b4 becomes an idea. And rook b8, a good move. Like, for example, if you played bishop e7, already b4 takes, bishop takes can be met with knight e5, queen a4, check. And in this entire line, when you go back knight c6, bishop c6, imagine that the rook is on b8. Then after takes here, the rook would be defending the bishop. That's the point of rook b8. So d3 played. Bishop e7. And knight d2. Opening up the bishop here and planning to put the knight on c4. to put pressure on the e5 point. He goes bd7, defending the c6 knight, and Arvind goes knight c4. Now, one of the plans is to take on c6 and take on e5. For example, b5 can fall into this. So that's the reason why f6 is played to bolster the center. And now a4 is a nice move. Because you stop b5, the knight is solidified, and next move you go f4. But Arvind goes f4 straight away. And now Hans Niemann pushes his pawn to b5, kicking the knight away from c4. Okay, the knight has to go back to e3. There's a lot of control on the d5 square here from the three pieces. And he castles here. And now Arvind makes a huge positional error. He pushes f5 and you can see Hans Niemann is a bit stunned there. Knight jumps into d4. Why is this such a big mistake? Because no longer can white take on e5. The central tension is gone. Black has a huge center with a knight on d4. But Arvind is banking on his king side play. He thinks that he can go h4, g5, first king h8. A useful move to tuck the king on the side of the board. And now bishop comes out to d2. Arvind gets up. He's thinking to himself, maybe rook c1, maybe knight e4. Putting pressure here. The bishop goes back to e8. And now bishop can come out to f7. But knight e4 played here. There's pressure on the c5 pawn. Although Arvind's moves are not approved by the engine, they do look logical. Okay, bishop f7 played. And now bishop to c3. But can the knight jump to b4 now? b3 now? Or you can push your pawn to b4. Okay, bishop b3 maybe not so relevant. You have queen e1. The queen is coming here. The c2 square is controlled. Look at Hans there. He has his pen in his hand and he is looking at what move to play. He does feel excited at this moment because you can sense it that white does not have too many possibilities here. So it pushes his pawn to b4. An excellent move. Pawn takes, bishop takes, queen takes, attacks the knight, also defends the pawn so that there is no pressure here. So it takes on b4. Takes. And taking the knight would be a mistake because of queen takes. So he comes back. And Hans is ready with his next move. He has 1 hour 16 minutes. Arvind has 1 hour 3 minutes. Bishop b3 attacking the queen. The queen goes to e1. That's where Arvind wants to anyway go with his queen. Queen g3 or queen h4 and start attacking. Knight comes to b5. Plays his knight here. And rook to c1. Now this rook is on the open file. He comes back bishop to g8. And one plan could very well be knight b3 followed by the a pawn rushing down. I think that's the reason why black has such a huge advantage. He goes pawn to a5 because he can create a passer here and he's winning. So Arvind is sitting on a time bomb. If he doesn't do something, he's busted. He goes king h1. Well, he's lining up his firepower. Rook g1. Also notice that the queen would love to go to g3 or something, but the e2 pawn keeps hanging. And knight jumps to b3. Well, it was also perhaps, was a4 also possible? But bishop b4, right? There's pressure here. So he first goes knight b3, aiming to get rid of the bishop. He goes knight to c4. Now, blocking the path of the bishop, trying to create some pressure here. Also look at the central squares. The knight on c4 is well positioned. Knight takes d2. Rook takes d2. And pawn to b3 played. The queen comes up to g3. The queen is actively positioned here. And now a4. White goes pawn to g5. In kingside play, a3, pushing pawn even further ahead. And white goes e3. And Hans Niemann just takes on g5. He could even push a2 even further, but fg5 taken. And Arvind now thinking about what to do. He's struggling. Clearly. He takes the pawn on e5 and hoping for some tactics like take and check. But rook b6 is a nice move, covering the sixth rank. Because now check, takes, check, here fg, and I can simply take rook g6. So having the rook here helps. B takes a3 taken. He takes with the knight. And now a big threat, b2, b1. Rook comes to b2, blocking the pawn. And I think black can go knight c2. He goes queen e8. He keeps an eye here. I think Hans is doing a brilliant job of playing on the queen side as well as on the king side. He's not letting any such threats come in. And so Arvind now goes pawn to d4. He's trying to use his trump cards. The pawns in the center. Knight jumps to c4. A good move. If knight takes knight, you have bishop takes. And black is better. So he plays rook b1. And Hans pushes forward. Pawn to b2 comes in. The pawn is now just one step away from queening. Rook f2 played. So that if you go knight here, then I can just take the pawn. Queen c8. And attacking the f5 pawn. Rook comes to c2. But now it's time to sack your queen. The knight is pinned here. And Hans, well, you can see him. He's ready. He's ready for the move. Knight takes knight. He's getting excited here. He takes it. Knight takes e5. Now, of course, you can't take with the queen. c2 is hanging. So rook takes queen. Rook takes rook. And you take with either way. There is rook c1 check, which is game over. So knight comes to c5, trying to block the c file. And he just takes it. Bishop takes c5. And he's asking, like, if you take here, I have rook c5, black is winning. But he plays bishop e4. Because both the pieces were anyway hanging, he decides to invest time in defending the rook. Knight to c4, pawn takes c5, and now rook takes c5 makes a lot of sense. Let's take stock of the material. A rook for a rook, a bishop for a bishop, which means that black has a rook and a knight for a queen. And with this b2 pawn being almost as good as a queen, black is a lot of material up already because of the quality. Queen f2 played, you try to go knight a3, you just lose this pawn. So again, you can't move the knight too soon. You have to do it step by step. Maybe knight d6 is not such a bad idea to attack the e4 bishop. And there's also a possibility to play some cool ideas like bishop d5 maybe. He goes knight d6, a nice move by Hans. The bishop needs saving now. He comes back, bishop c2. Maybe taking here is not possible right now, but a check to the king. King g1. And look at this move, knight e4. He plays it. Because if bishop e4, I take here, and you take here, it's already rook c1 checkmate. So that's the reason why he goes queen e2. And now I was wondering if knight c3 is possible. I believe it is. It seems like a very natural and a good move. Knight to c3. And see Hans there calculating and finds it. Knight comes to c3, attacking the rook and the queen on e2. And now queen to d3 played. And you can take the rook. Knight takes b1. If bishop takes b1, that is rook c1 check. But intermezzo, f6. And the point is, if you're careless, I'll checkmate you in one move. But Hans simply chops off the bishop. Queen takes d5 played here, hoping for some back rank tricks. And if you think if this pawn is equal to the queen, then black is actually two rooks and a knight up. So takes the pawn and now check. You could very well give up this rook on b6. Let's say queen b6, just knight a3 and b1 queen finishes off the game. So queen check. He goes up king g6. And now queen e4 check, trying to win this rook. He goes queen e8, but that's not enough. Like let's say for here, for example, here queen c2, again knight a3 and black wins. So queen e8, king f5. Hans starts to run with his king. It's natural that with so many pieces, there's no perpetual here. Queen comes up to d4. And king f3. Check. Rook e2 is possible to block. Like rook e2, queen b1, rook e1, queen e1 and b1. But he just takes on e3. He gives up the rook here. And now knight to d2. I think Hans Niemann has seen it. Knight d2 with the idea of b1. And if you go queen c5 check, I go king e2. And there's no more checks. You take the rook, I make a queen, and he resigns there. Hans Niemann scores a big win. And with this, he moves on in the joint lead in the tournament along with Nodirbek Abdusattorov, 3 out of 4. What a start for Hans, and what a fine game by him. Since Arvind made that opening error of pushing his pawn to f5, Hans was absolutely flawless. He gave his opponent no chance at all in the game. And this entire plan of giving up the queen, then a rook, then another rook here, like, it's amazing that Hans actually sacrificed the entire house against Arvind, and came out on top. So a good win for Hans Niemann. Arvind Chithambaram slumps to his first defeat after 3 draws in the tournament. And it's very nice to see them both analyzing together, trying to understand where the mistakes happened. And for Arvind, this is all a great learning experience. For Hans, he's been looking for a tournament victory, and nothing bigger than winning the Wimbledon of chess in Vaikanze.